Speaker, we should not, as leaders, encourage to turn our country into a casino economy. Gambling has a lot of vices.
Betting companies are a problem to this country. They are a cause of corruption, they are a cause of problems, they are a cause of a lot of other things.
The Minister for Finance, in exercising this discretion, Mr. Speaker, and I hope the Legal Affairs Committee and Finance can raise this concern, while everybody's taxes was going up, the taxes for betting companies went down.
If Kenya Revenue Authority has declared an institution to be tax compliant, where does a minister get the powers to declare you to be non-tax compliant?
We don't want a country that is dependent on the wishes of one individual. We give ourselves a constitution and said we're a country that is going to be governed by rule of law.
I need to understand something about this whole back and forth on betting between the government and betting firms. So we're having this conversation with Cleophas Malala, he's Senator, Kakamega County. We also have Benny Kanyonge, who's an advocate from Center for Sports Law. In a couple of minutes, I'll be speaking to Jakoyo Midiwo, who's a former game member of parliament. Senator Malala, just before we took the break, you said you have seen documentation to the effect that these betting firms have been paying taxes to the government. And so from where I sit, I'm asking myself, these are companies that you say have tax compliant. They have tax compliance certificates from KRA. How then does the same KRA now come and say these guys are not paying taxes? I mean, this whole thing just doesn't make sense.
I think that's the big question, Linda, because when we were perusing through the submissions of various companies, we realized that they had been issued with a tax compliance certificate. And as you all know, that this industry has a regulator. The Betting Control and Licensing Board had given them prerequisites to renew their licenses over a period of time. And all these companies have been fulfilling all those prerequisites. So it is sad to note that one day somebody wakes up in the comfort of his office and says that from today henceforth you are not transacting because you owe the government 20 billion, you owe the government 30 billion. And that calculation is being done by the...
Listen, it's the same government via KRA that cleared them. I mean, gave them a tax compliance certificate. So...
And that is what we are questioning. That is what we are questioning. Why is there a contradiction within government itself? Because KRA gave clear indication that these companies had fulfilled all their tax requirements. But on the other side, CS Matiang'i, and that's why we are saying CS Matiang'i has got vested interest in this gaming industry. Because how do you wake up and say that I'm licensing certain companies and certain companies are not going to operationalize from today? And therefore, it is an issue that we need to look deep into. We've summoned CS Matiang'i. He will be appearing before the committee on Thursday, and we'll expect him to answer these pertinent questions.
The biggest thing, the biggest issue in all this is that tax aspect. Or is there any other issue that stands out for you in this whole betting conversation?
I think that is the genesis of this stalemate. The genesis of this stalemate is basically the interpretation of winnings and them taxing that the winning. And this matter is before the tax tribunal, the tax tribunal, and the matter is still being adjudicated there. Why then should the government disregard the orders of the High Court and the Tax Tribunal? I think it is prudent enough for these companies to be allowed to continue trading as they sort out this tax impasse. So we are saying that let the CS Matiang'i come out. Yes.
I mean, when you sit as a senator,
let the CS Matiang'i come out clearly. Yes. I'm not getting you well.
No, go on, go on.
Yeah, I'm saying let CS Matiang'i tell us clearly what is his role in the gaming industry. And yet we have an independent betting control and licensing board which had already even renewed severally licenses for these companies. And therefore,
those are
you cannot be the
you need
CS
to ask him
and
when
again
he gets before you.
Control.
Those are questions you'll ask him when he gets before you. So finally, before I let you go, I'm actually concerned because we have reports of individuals who are addicts of this betting game, and we have individuals who've lost fortunes. Does it not concern you, as a leader, as a parent, that there are individuals who are actually messing their lives up with respect to betting? And you cannot sit and tell me because people are losing jobs. I mean, people are selling drugs left, right, center, so you can't legalize it because it provides employment. So does it concern you that there are lives that are being destroyed?
Linda, I would want to agree to that extent. But again, we have Kenya Breweries, which is selling alcohol. And we have people losing lives because of excessive intake of alcohol. But this issue is an issue of responsible betting. And one of the requirements for a betting company to operate is to disseminate relevant information as to the effects of excessive betting. And therefore, this issue is an issue of regulations, an issue of having a balanced morality within the society, which will eventually not disadvantage the upcoming youth. But on the issue of empowering, let's not look at the negatives alone. Look at what these betting companies are doing to the improvement of our sporting activities in the country. We have teams like Gor Mahia, we have teams like AFC. We are not even certain on how they are going to transact their international obligations once this season begins.
I sort of disagree with that because the notion that you're putting across is that sports cannot go on in the Republic of Kenya without betting.
No, but these are players who are contributing and supporting sports in a very big way. They pay taxes to a tune of 1 billion per month, which translates to around 20 billion per year. This money is used to enhance the sporting activities in Kenya, and therefore we cannot just disregard them and say that they are not key players in enhancement of sporting activity in Kenya, and therefore they are key players. Look at the Kenya Premier League. It's being sponsored by SportPesa. In Kakamega County last year, we had a tournament where 624 teams benefited from SportPesa sponsorship. And therefore, this is not a mere achievement that these companies have achieved in the recent past. Government itself, when you look at the Ministry of Sports, what the Ministry of Sports has done in Kakamega County, to be specific, there is little to celebrate about. And therefore, we cannot just brush off these betting companies and say that they do not impact to the improvement of sporting activities in Kenya.
I hear you. So let's betting go on because they're doing ABC for us. Okay. So Senator Malala, Kakamega Senator Cleophas Malala, thank you for your time. I absolutely need to let you go. I'm sorry. I have to let you go because I have other people as well I need to speak to. But thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So let me bring in, do we have Jakoyo Midiwo? Xavier, do we have Jakoyo Midiwo? All right, so let's now bring in Jakoyo Midiwo, former Game Member of Parliament. Sir, good evening. Thank you for speaking to us. So a couple of members of Parliament held a presser today. They're saying, let's give back the licenses to the betting firms. So opinion is varied. Some of them are saying you have people losing their jobs. These guys are supporting the sports industry in the country. Perhaps they're vested interest in all this. What are your thoughts? Mheshimiwa, can you hear me? Okay, we seem not to have Jakoyo Midiwo, but let me bring in Benny Kanyonge. Kanyonge, just listening into Cleophas Malala, and he says, there are vested interests in all this. And it's not just betting that is destroying lives out here, but then that also brings to the concern that, yes, perhaps it's a willing buyer, willing seller, but there's also a level of responsibility that is placed upon these betting firms just to inform people that this can actually lead to an addiction. And like you said, what happens in the UK, there's some sort of help for those who are addicted. Senator Malala says at some point, just when I was speaking to him, he was saying, these betting firms are at a point where they give as much information as they can. I have not seen any, just to be clear, I've not seen any. But there has to be some level of responsibility that is placed on these betting firms.
Linda, I'm hoping both arms of government will take some time and benefit from probably some bit of research on what exactly the problem is. I'm not in a position to speak about the weight of the problem. I mean, I see it every day. We hear about it. But I'll talk about the different responsibilities. Members of Parliament and senators have a duty, I guess, as far as oversight of government is concerned. And as well, they have a duty to come up with laws, now that they represent the people, to come up with laws and being in touch with the people that protect the public good as far as gambling is concerned. Indeed, the debate, in my opinion, that is being had currently in the public, I think it's very healthy. That's how I think laws are created. It begins with a need, it begins with a debate, and that's why public participation in all these aspects is very important. Public participation is hearing from the public, from concerned parties, from affected parties, from specialists in this field, just to get a clear and wholesome perspective about what exactly we are facing in terms of whether it's an epidemic, what is the magnitude of it, and what kind of solutions, what kind of creative solutions can we come up with to better the situation. And so I'd throw the ball back to the legislators to come up with better ways of dealing with this thing, even as they engage the public, even as they urge the public to participate in that debate.
Just before we took a break, you had mentioned that perhaps we need to have all stakeholders sit down and have a conversation, and you've just alluded to it as well. And you said, let's have a conversation that will lead to a solution that will not lead to an injustice. From a sporting perspective, what would be an injustice in this betting conversation?
The two legislators have touched on it. The government has a primary responsibility to ensure that sports, people are able to, sports is probably encouraged and well supported. And they do have a primary responsibility as far as that is concerned. In a situation where the government has proved incapable, and we've seen very many examples, or unwilling to support, then you have these firms coming in and filling in a gap. They fill in two gaps. In terms of revenue collection, of course, it means the tax base for the government increases, and that's important. But then too, and most importantly, they go ahead and also sponsor some of these teams, as it happens all over the world. Ideally, these teams should be fully sponsored by government, who have that responsibility, but then they come in to fill a need. So we cannot wish them away as important actors. And that's why, just like when it comes to the creation of any law in this republic, public participation, involvement of stakeholders at all levels of society is absolutely important. Anything to the contrary then becomes an injustice. And that goes as far as even a decision to, wish away decisions by courts and tribunals of competent jurisdiction. Then the big question is, so who's supposed to obey the law and who shouldn't? Is it the sporting companies which are required to adhere to tax regulations and tax laws only? Is it the public only? Is it the state as well, even as it enforces and carries out its responsibility? These are the major questions, I believe, Linda.
Okay, so you have less than a minute. So if at all, these betting firms have to be allowed to continue operating in Kenya, that's assuming this whole impasse is sorted out. What would be the ideal situation for you for these betting firms in terms of conditions, terms and conditions, how they operate to ensure that young lives out there? Because I've heard Babu Owino saying, it's a willing buyer, willing seller. But some of the individuals involved in this thing are, it's 18, 17, 20, 21. These are people who are desperate for success and they would pay anything to get there. So how then do we have a conducive environment, for the betting companies to work, and as well as Kenyans to have to be protected, quote unquote, from this addictive activity of betting in the country?
Well, 1 minute. The bottom line is, everybody, whether a physical person or even companies or the state, every actor in this debate has a responsibility to protect the public interest. At the same time, everyone has a right to be given the space to operate, of course, within the confines of the law. And the law becomes a key instrument in this regard. How do we proceed? Have a sitting, come up with laws and regulations, that allow everyone across the board to operate freely within the confines of the law. I think if we can do this, then I know it sounds simple, but I think it's doable. It has been done in other sectors, and it can be done in this sector as well.
Yeah, you're making it sound very, very simple.
Yes, I know.
Thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us this evening on The Big Story. Benny Kanyonge, advocate from Center for Sports Law. We also had Cleophas Malala, Kakamega senator, who spoke to us from Kakamega. Our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, also spoke to Babu Owino, Embakasi East Member of Parliament. We do apologize. We were not able to speak to Jakoyo Midewo, who is the former Game Member of Parliament. So just in a nutshell, Babu Owino says, I mean, if it's immoral, then ban all of it together. You can't allow some betting firms to operate and others not to operate. If it's wrong for all. It can't be wrong for half the group. Malala says, I mean, they've seen documents, him in his capacity, seen documents to the effect that betting firms have been paying taxes. They're tax compliant. And that is where I don't understand a lot, because there's no way KRA can give tax compliant certificate to a company that has not complied, that has not paid taxes. So that is where I find a problem. Benny Kanyonge is saying, I mean, let's look at the UK. They have a gaming code. They have a gaming commission that actually ensures that these betting firms operate in a guarded environment. So that is where we leave this conversation this evening on The Big Story. I'm Linda Ogutu.